So today, here we have with us Dr. Temple Grandin. She needs no introduction, but just to give a brief.
And the Emmy goes to Temple Grandin.
She is a speaker, author, and autism rights activist. Also, she's a professor of animal science at the Colorado State University. So here we have Doctor with us. Also, we have a parent who is Mercy Kairichi. She's from Kenya. She is a parent of not one, not two, but 3 sons who are on the autism spectrum. Before giving birth to these 3 sons, she also has 4 daughters. So yes, here we have with us a professional and a parent is what makes this show, the Dolly Show, unique. Dr. Temple Grandin.
Well, I just want to tell a little bit about myself. I had no speech until age 4. I was taken into the doctor at age 2.5. That time, nobody knew what autism was. But I had all of the symptoms, and I went to a neurologist, and the neurologist referred me to a speech therapy school that 2 teachers taught out of their home, and I had 6 students. I was very lucky to get into very good early education. 2.5 years old. Cannot emphasize how important that is. And there were 3 main things they wanted to teach me. Speech, and when they talked to me, they'd slow down, like they'd hold up a cup like this, and they'd say, cup. And then they'd say, cup, where they slowly announced the sound of the letters. The other thing is, I was slow to respond. I was like a mobile phone. The poor signal takes time to download a web page. Slow to respond. To give the child time to respond. And a lot of emphasis on turn-taking games. Learning how to wait and take turn, because that teaches a child to inhibit a response. Very, very important. Then later on, it's board games where you take turns. And then the other big emphasis was skills. Okay, brushing your hair, using utensils to eat with. And I liked going to therapy. Now, there's a lot of therapies that put a lot of emphasis on eye contact. There was no emphasis on eye contact. It was speech, turn-taking, and basic skills. Using utensils, put your jacket on. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to start education early. There's some bad situations, and just recently I went to a rural area where there was a 2-year wait list for a 3-year-old to get services. You cannot wait. You've got to start now. Maybe recruit some grandmothers in the neighborhood to work with this child. And My Way I See It book might be really helpful, but you cannot wait 2 years. The worst thing you could do is to do nothing and let the child just zone out, tune out on a phone. That is what you don't do. And what I have found on good teachers with autism is that some just have the natural ability to know how to engage these kids. And just get some grandmothers to come in and play with the kid and interact with them. Because doing nothing is the absolute worst thing you can do with a nonverbal 2-year-old or 3-year-old.
According to the CDC, what we see is now the incidence of autism is increasing rapidly. It's 1 in 36 children that we have on the spectrum. So why do you think is this happening?
Well, they've changed the diagnostic guidelines over the years. In the 1980s, for a child to be labeled autistic, they had to have obvious speech delay and early onset. It's a very, very young child. Then in the early 90s, the Asperger's came in, which is basically no speech delay, but socially awkward. And then in 2013, they merged everything all together. So now you're going all the way from Einstein, he had no speech until age 3, to somebody that might have very severe epilepsy on top of the autism and cannot dress themselves. So you got this big spectrum. Now the problem is when the children are very little, I looked very severe, very, very severe. But the good news was no epilepsy. I was tested for epilepsy. They knew how to do that years ago. And I was negative, no epilepsy. That usually improves the prognosis. But you work with little ones. And then some of them become fully verbal. Some become partially verbal. Some do not speak. But some of the ones that do not speak can learn to type independently. And we need to be doing this. And the best thing for typing on is an iPad tablet or Samsung tablet or a tablet made by some other company that's similar to an iPad. And the reason for this is when you type on the virtual keyboard, the print appears next to the keyboard. There's no gaze shift. If I'm looking at this, I can push the button, I can see the print, and I do not have to move my eye. Even on a laptop, if I'm looking here, I have to look up. They have very difficulty with gaze shift. That doesn't work. If you have to use a desktop, put the portable keyboard on a box, raise it up so the print appears right along the top of the keyboard because they cannot gaze shift. But there's quite a few non-speakers that can learn to type. And this is something that we need to be teaching. But we have to use something with the no gaze shift. The simplest thing is an iPad or similar tablet made by some other company.
At what age did you learn you are autistic?
Oh, I didn't really fully understand until I was a teenager.
Your parents had to tell you, or you had to figure
Well,
it
the
yourself?
thing is, there were no books to read. There was no support groups. You see, I was born in 47, and the first autism book I ever read was Bernard Rimmelin's Infantile Autism, and I read that was in the early 80s. And then there was that horrible Empty Fortress where they were blaming parents.
Yes.
And I read that a little bit earlier. But now there's just so much good stuff available. And of course, in my era, they used to think that, there was more psychoanalysis and that kind of stuff. My first really good understanding was when I read Bernard Rimmelin's book. And then it's in the late 80s, I found a few first-person accounts. There just wasn't much. There was the Siege, Clara Claiborne Park. I don't think I read that in the 80s, but there just weren't many books around. Wasn't like now, you've got all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. No.
You see, even in the 90s, there was a lot of stuff started to come in those days. Donna Williams's books, which of course I read. You see, and all these things gave me insight. The things that gave me the most insight were first-person reports and brain research, where they showed how some of the social circuits were lighting up, but MRI wasn't able to do that until the 90s.
Oh, okay.
See, I had a brain scan in the late 80s, but that was just a static, anatomical MRI. Yeah, you see the MRI that can measure the brain function, that didn't exist. That didn't exist in the 70s. I can remember the very first MRI scanner out in California. Eric, I was always interested in learning, when I learned about the research, like contact scientists, and then they get to look at my brain. So I was reading all the brain research stuff. And I got insights from that. Then my very first book was Emergence Labeled Autistic. That came out in the mid-80s. And I had been doing a few talks at groups for occupational therapists on sensory issues, talking about that. Those are the things that gave me insight, were the first-person reports and the brain research. And a lot of the theoretical stuff, that was not very helpful.
So as parents, Dr. Temple, we are sometimes confused whether to tell the child he is autistic, like if he is in that level 1 where he can understand.
If he's doing super good,
Yes.
well,
Like personally, I don't know whether I should tell Ricky he is autistic.
is he doing well?
Yes, he is doing well.
Has friends?
Yes, he has friends. He even said the other day he had a crush.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it's, then there's other kids having trouble. It's going to be a relief for them to find out they're autistic. Now, for me, one of the things that's given me, a satisfying life is having an interesting career.
Yes.
And this gets into sort of your identity. For me, it's the professor comes first.
Yes.
Now, autism is an important part of who I am.
Yes.
I have a lot of friends in the autism community, but I see too many young people. I was in my mid-30s. I was a lot older, but I'm seeing like teenagers. All they want to do is autism advocacy.
Correct.
When they're young, when they're like 15. And I said, you will be a better advocate if you get out and get a job and you keep it and you explain to other people, how you were successful in your job. You'll be a better advocate.
Yes.
Now, there are some accommodations I need, like a checklist. If then you disclose at work. If everything's going great, I would not disclose. But you might say, pilots need a checklist, I need one too.
I need one.
And you just say it like that.
Correct.
And then if they balk at that and go, pilots are required to use a checklist. Legally, by law,
Yeah.
have to use a checklist.
Correct. From when you were diagnosed, doctor, up till today, what is the difference that you have seen in autism?
Well, one of the reasons I think they get the increase is I think the electronic devices have contributed to some of this. You've got kids spending 8 hours a day on playing video games, looking at videos, just doing stuff like that, and not doing enough engagement with other people. I think another thing that helped me, old-fashioned 50s upbringing, where children were taught manners. You were taught to shake hands. You were taught table manners. And when I did something bad, let's say I stirred my water with my finger. Mother didn't scream no. She gave the instruction and would say, use the spoon. Give the instruction instead of screaming no. When the child does something that's kind of bad manners, like touching too much of the vegetables at the vegetable stand, you can say, only touch the vegetables you are going to buy, because other people think it's disgusting when you touch them.
Correct.
In other words, you give the instruction. And you also give an explanation as to why. And there's many teachable moments. You might have like 3 or 4 in a single meal.
Correct.
And that's helped a lot of people. Also, what's helped a lot of the people my age to get jobs and stuff was learning work skills young.
Correct.
Well, I think a lot of it is why the autism's increased is a combination of changing the guidelines.
Correct.
Then all of the distractions and things you can do online, watch endless videos. And it's so easy to stream all this. I think that's contributed to it. And I think some of it's just increased detection. So it'd be 3 things. It would be changing the diagnostic guidelines, all of the spending hours and hours on electronic things, not being taught social skills at a young age in a much more structured way. Now, as far as the more severe end of the spectrum and non-speaking, many of those in the past would have just been labeled mentally retarded. Now it's called intellectual disability. But what's happened in some places is a lot of children that used to be just go to mentally retarded, they weren't labeled autism, are now labeled autism. And one of the reasons for doing that is to get services.
So yes, Mercy, in regards to you, I would really love to know your journey, and I'm so sure Dr. Temple Grandin also would love to know about you.
Yeah, so my journey has been a lot of ups and downs. And like Dr. Temple has said, diagnosis late. So from around my sons were 12 months, I could tell that there's something
wrong. Yeah,
something wrong. But I didn't know what this wrong is. But and then of course now I had 4 daughters, 4 neurotypical daughters. So it was I was not a first time mom. I could tell that something is wrong.
Something was definitely wrong.
Yeah,
Yes.
but when I went to the pediatricians, to the doctors, they said no, it's because they are boys. It's because they are triplets, so they dismissed me.
I've heard this over and over again. I've had parents tell me the same thing.
Yes.
You have a child that's not talking, they go, oh, grow out of it. No.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you need to start working with them now.
So until age 2 years is when we went to a neurologist, and he, in 5 minutes, he just said, your son's are autistic. And that really had a huge crush on me, because I had never heard what autism, even pronouncing the word itself was difficult. And then having a doctor tell you this is the problem, but there's no solution. That was very heartbreaking.
That's horrible.
It was really horrible. And I remember sinking deeper every day into depression until I got clinical depression. I was also sick. I even attempted suicide. It was so hard. You are having these children and none of them can sit even for 1 minute. They are just running up and down, running up and down. We were told that maybe they are deaf. Like Dr. Temple said, we had to have them tested for hearing test, and it came out okay. But the worst part is not knowing what to do. Like in Africa, we don't have these elaborate resources, therapy centers, diagnostic centers. So you are on your own as a parent and struggling now, what should I do? And the doctor has said there's nothing that can be done. So it was really very, very difficult.
And how old was the child when the doctor told you that?
2 years.
No, there's lots that can be done in 2 years. And one of the things when we're discussing this, I always want to know the age, because 2 years is the early education age. There's lots you can do
Yes.
that I just talked about.
Yes.
Teaching words, teaching turn taking, teaching them skills, lots that you can do.
Yes, now we didn't have any guidance on really what to do. And again, the immense pressure of just taking care of them with all this up, down, it was so,
Well, one comment I want to make
yes.
is that, let's say you're in a situation with no services. You cannot do it all by yourself.
Yes.
You're going to have to go to your church, go to some other neighborhood association or something, and get some grandmothers to come in and help you work with that child. You cannot do it all by yourself. You're going to get totally stressed out. Somebody's got to come in and work with those little kids, and we're going to just have to ask for help in the neighborhood.
Yes.
And because you're doing it yourself, you can't. You're going to get too stressed.
Yes.
But you've got to do something. And the thing, you think that, well, you got to have all a PhD or something. No, you don't.
Correct.
You don't have to have a PhD to work with these kids. I'd recommend, My Way I See It book. That'll give them some insight. But what's the first thing you do is just engage the kid. So he's sitting there. Let's say he's looking at a phone all day. Not something I want him doing, but let's say it was. Then we begin to take turns. We're going to take turns looking at the phone. Turn it into a turn-taking game. And then we'll learn the word for phone. You see, you start teaching some words. But the first thing you've got to do is get engagement through a turn-taking game. And what I have found is that some people have the natural ability to do this. And some don't. Like, let's say you've got 3 grandmother volunteers. There's going to be one there that's just going to know how to do it. And then you're going to see the kid progress. And then as he progresses a little more, say, well, let's go out and, look at some nature in the park, find things to do. I want to get them off the devices and interacting with people.
So, Dr. Temple, you said you first began to talk at age 4.
4, yeah.
Yeah, that was quite good.
Yes.
Yeah. Because now for those children who are completely nonverbal, it's a whole totally different story. They cannot tell you they are sick. They
This
cannot
is a
tell
real
you.
problem.
Yes. When they get sick, you get to know when they are already so sick and they are just lying down. So like my 2 sons, it's very different the way they are with Ricky, because you have to. It's like a small child. You have to keep anticipating and guessing. What is
Well, you have an older child that's nonverbal, let's say a 10-year-old.
yes.
And now he's been pretty good. Now you have a behavior problem. First thing you have to look at is a painful medical problem they can't tell you about. Their stomach hurts.
Yes.
They've got a headache. They've got the flu, whatever.
Yeah.
And doctors sometimes will say, well, it's just the autism. No. I just talked to somebody a week ago or so, and this autistic nonverbal adult was having behavior problems and grabbing at his head. They looked in his ear, and there was a broken piece of an earbud, electron, a little headphone thing in his ear.
Crazy.
And they took that out, and then they were fine. It really was something wrong. This is an actual case that I heard about just a couple of weeks ago, like really, really recently.
Yeah, that's really important, that you should not always see behavior as a standalone. There could be other underlying.
Well, that's right. And
Trying to communicate.
And where you're most likely to have a hidden painful medical, all of a sudden there's really bad behavior. And one big area is stomach hurting. Because gastrointestinal problems are increased in autism.
Correct.
That's very well known. Tummy hurts, constipated, ear infection, sinus congestion, toothaches, yeast infections, urinary tract infections. These are things that are easy to check for. Always have to make sure it doesn't have something causing pain. And as soon as they looked in the ear, they found a piece of the earphone.
So the parents need to check for all these kind of things as well. That's really important. So yeah, Mercy, so once you were not able to do anything, so how did you take your journey further? What were your challenges?
So it took me over a year to get the right team. Like Dr. Temple is saying, those who know how to do speech, they know how to teach behavior, like teaching them how to sit down. They would hold the child like this, sit on the lap, hold like this, and time at least So we moved from 10 seconds to 1 minute. So it's been hard, but once we got at least the right team, we were able to start making some progress. The children concentration started, improving, and even the hyperactivity started reducing. And then at the age of 5.5 years, we were fortunate to take them for stem cell treatment, and that also improved their outcome further. So I don't know, Dr. Temple, during your time, what kind of therapies were there? But today there is a myriad of...
Well, some individuals are helped by special diets, like taking wheat out, taking out dairy products. Sometimes you can put yogurt back in because that's fermented. That sometimes is helpful. But the thing I want to really emphasize for these little kids is you got to start working with them.
Yes.
Now, how did you find the right team?
So enrolling them to a school was a problem. So we went to this school that teaches Montessori.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and now they saw our children as special needs, so they got a consultant, a special education consultant.
Wow.
So who came and did an assessment. The assessment was, these are the issues and this is how to do it. So they gave us how to do toilet training, dressing, brushing.
So nice.
And that is how we, from a very early age, they started doing self-help activities. And now all of them they can dress themselves, they can toilet themselves, they can shower themselves, they can eat a little bit of clumsiness in eating, but at least our lives are much more functional. The family is much more functional than before. And their sleep has also become better because there's a time they were not sleeping up to 2 a.m., 3 a.m., they had sleep disturbances. Yeah.
Great. So nice improvement, because as Dr. Temple Grandin said, putting things together and consolidating is what works. You have done a lot of work in animal welfare. So your techniques, the new methods that you put in across, we need to discuss that.
How did I get interested in that? The opportunity came up when I was 15 to go to my aunt's ranch in Arizona. I was a Easterner. So this is where doors to opportunity can come up. And I was afraid to go. And mother gave me a choice. I could go for 1 week or stay all summer. But I could make that decision after I got out there. Not going wasn't one of the choices. Gave me a choice, but not going wasn't one of them. And I got out there and I loved it. And I talked to another mother where her child didn't want to go to sleepaway camp. And he got out there and he loved it. You give some choices, but just staying in your room all the time, that's not one of the choices. We're not going to be doing that. And it comes to the matter of exposure. You got to expose kids to interesting things to get them interested in interesting things. Now, autistic kids often get fixated on some favorite thing. And when I was a little kid, I'd just draw the same horse head over and over again. So mother broadened my fixation. Let's draw the whole horse. Let's draw the saddle. You broaden it. So if a child likes motorcycles, well, let's learn about all the different kinds of motorcycles. Let's learn how the engine works. Who invented the motorcycle? You see, you can read about it. So you can work mathematics into that, reading into that, and you can repair motorcycles. I know you have lots of motorcycles in India. And people that can repair them are really needed. And there's some autistic people, they could just figure out a motorcycle engine and they're going to have a job. Fixing motorbikes? Well, people come knocking to your door. You see, and I'm always thinking about how I can direct that towards a career, because something like motorbikes or trains, there's also I'm interested in transportation devices. Those things can all turn into good careers.
So Mercy, in regards to Ricky and your other children, how have you molded them? How have you molded your career?
I totally concur with her about exposure. And this exposure will, so like my sons, I've put them into different things to try and see where they are gifted. And one of them is he loves cycling. So I have now engaged him in a cycling club, and hopefully he can do cycling as a career.
Good.
Then Eric he loves water and swimming. So right now, he doesn't know how to do swimming the right way, but he knows how to float. He likes being underwater, and I normally envision him working maybe with the Navy, although I don't know exactly which steps to take to get him there. And Ricky is multi-talented. He loves playing the piano. He loves playing the tennis. Dr. Temple, I don't know what you can say about that, because every time he says, I want to be a pilot. And even when he goes to the tablet, he will be on the plane, trying to ride the plane on.
Oh, he's doing the simulator?
Yes.
Is he good at it?
He went only once.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, this brings up the different kinds of thinkers, right? Visual thinking. I am an object visualizers. Think in photographs. Think about all the pictures on your phone. Now imagine everything in your memory is like pictures on your phone. And you could search them. That's how I think. And my kind of mind is good at art, working with animals, because animals are sensory based. But one of the things that can really go into good careers that object visualizers are good at is mechanical. Fixing the motorbikes, or maybe fixing the airplanes.
Yes.
Repairing airplanes might be, they have a lot of rules about pilots, but
Yeah.
repairing airplanes
Yes.
would be something that he could do. And then finally, photography. That's another area for the object visualizers. Now you take your pattern thinkers. These are the kids that are visual spatial pattern thinkers. Music and math, physics, chemistry, computer programming. Where my kind of mind is terrible at math. I can't do higher math. The pattern thinker, autistic mind, excels in math. And then you have your word thinker, autistic. This is your history lover. That tends to be their favorite subject in school. They'll know every fact about their favorite sports team. And something that could be good careers for them is what I call specialized retail. Yeah.
So that brings me to a question which parents have been asking us.
Okay.
So these children, they get these life skills, they get these visual thinking and all of that. But after that, they are not able to get jobs because, they're not accepted.
Well, I was taught working skills really young. When I was 13, mother got me a little sewing job with a seamstress that just worked in her home. And I took dresses apart and hand hemmed them. I was cleaning horse stalls as a teenager. When I was in college, I had career-relevant internships, really important. I worked in a research lab one summer, and I was an aide for an autistic child another summer. I'm seeing too many smart autistics graduate from college. Heard about one just the other day, a lawyer, top honors, top LSAT scores, couldn't function in a law firm. And I think part of the problem is not taught enough life skills. Also, this particular person maybe shouldn't be doing the court arguments. He should have been figuring out the case strategy and that part. Let somebody else do the talking in court.
Correct.
Absolutely brilliant. And now he's just doing a job in some local business and it's not law. But I think part of the problem is not learning to work, because you go out to the computer companies. Half those programmers are autistic, and they just go right into those computer companies.
Yes.
The kind of mind I work with is people that are good with mechanical things, like equipment for the equipment at a food processing plant, for example. Now, the people I work with have been retiring out.
Correct.
And they're not getting replaced. We don't have people to fix things. This elevator's not getting fixed.
Not getting fixed.
And there's a connection here between that and what's going on in education.
Yes.
One mistake that we made in our schools was taking out the hands-on shop classes, automotive and motorcycle fixing classes. And so the visual thinkers are getting addicted to video games when they ought to be working on mechanical devices. You can set up an independent shop to fix motorcycles. If you're good at that, plenty of business.
Definitely.
Oh, there's a little store around here. Charger port of my phone got dirt in it.
Yeah.
I tried cleaning it out with a toothpick. That didn't work. Well, this guy took some little tool he had and stuck it in there. Now my charger port works. Thank you. Didn't have to buy a new phone. I can tell you, I thank him for that. So let's just start out with fully verbal, doing well in school, autistic. One big problem I'm seeing is parents often do too much for them.
Correct.
I'm seeing 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds that have never shopped by themselves. They are not learning money. I was taught saving money at a very young age. They don't have a bank account.
Correct.
They don't know how to do laundry. They just haven't learned any of these skills. They don't know how to order food in a restaurant. Too many parents hold on too tight. I talked to one mother and I suggested that when she was putting fuel in her car to give the child some money, and This is a teenager, run in the shop and buy something. And she says, I'm afraid to do that. In a lot of cases, doing these most basic things that I already knew how to do. A lot of parents push academics, and that's good. But I'm seeing graduate super honors lawyer, super honors some other major, and they cannot handle the workplace. And we need to start teaching work skills. Okay, clean up your own bedroom, help washing the dishes, and then when they're around 11 years old, we used to, in the U.S., have paper routes where children would deliver newspapers, walking dogs for the neighbors. It's very important for them to do a task on a schedule outside the family. Help an elderly person that's next door clean their house. Do a job at the community center, something where they're expected to be there. I talked to one 12-year-old just within the last year, and she was her church's coffee lady. And very proud of that. But she had to be there to do the coffee and do it on time and do it right. And then before they graduate from high school, they need to be doing some real jobs. Let's avoid rapid multitasking chaos jobs like a takeout window at lunchtime. Also, I have problems with processing speed and working memory. So any task that involves a sequence, put it down like a pilot's checklist in a bullet point format. I need an external printed working memory. This is a very, very simple intervention that's going to save a lot of jobs. Because if the boss just go yak, 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 and they've shown them like 4 times how to close down the cash register at night, and then the boss gets mad. Where if you just made the pilot's checklist the first time, very simple intervention. The other thing is the rude to customers. Well, if you just say you're rude to customers, that's not specific enough. You might have to say, telling a customer they're stupid, not acceptable. Then you explain to them what they should do.
Yes.
I had criticized some welding on one of my first jobs. I said, look, I pigeon doo-doo. And the plant engineer made me apologize for that talk. He told me what I should do. He was a very good job coach.
Wow.
You also cannot be just a rude, filthy, dirty slob. That's another thing you just cannot be.
Yeah.
That's not acceptable.
Correct. So these work trainers are really important is what
Yeah.
you would...
Now, lots of times you can get a person with autism in a job, and a dangerous time is changing bosses. That can be a dangerous time. Because when I was working for this farm magazine, the magazine got sold, and we got a new boss, and he didn't like me. And then Susie, the nice lady who did the advertising layout, I think she was autistic. And I didn't notice that Jim didn't like me. But Susie said, Jim doesn't like you. We need to make this big scrapbook of all your articles to show to Jim. And then when he saw all the work I had done, he gave me a raise.
Wow.
I saved my job. It was a big scrapbook about that thick. I actually still have it. And that saved my job.
Wow.
What we have to do on the jobs is forget about the interviews. Half of all good jobs are gotten through connections. Now, I've designed a lot of what I learned to do to show off my drawings. I did freelance designing of cattle handling facilities. And when people saw my drawing, I learned to sell my work instead of myself. The other thing is there's a really important scene in the HBO movie Temple Grandin where I go up to the editor of our state farm magazine and I get his card. Because I knew if I wrote for that magazine, that would really, really help my career. And I started writing for them. And I wasn't afraid to go up and get the card because as a young child, I'd sold candy for charity that teaches talking to people. Also, in our neighborhood, when kids were 7 and 8 years old, the parents had a party, you had to put your good clothes on, greet the guests, and serve the snacks.
Correct.
So that taught interacting with adults. I know you have lots of little shops in India.
Correct. Yes, we do.
And I've been to other countries that have the similar, lots of little shops. They could come in after school and help, shelve some items and start teaching those working skills young.
Correct. Correct.
This is an area where they've been very successful, selling cars, because they'll know every feature of every car on the lot. Selling phones, different calling plans, selling business insurance, selling banking products, sporting goods. These are all jobs that autistic people have had that have been very successful. because it'll help a customer get the most expensive product, the right product for that customer. So those are kind of your different kinds of mind. I worked with a lot of autistic people who were visual thinkers like me, terrible at math. They could invent equipment, build equipment. I worked with them. And I noticed out here there's a broken elevator. And for my kind of mind, fixing elevators, that's something that my kind of mind can definitely do. We need people to fix elevators.
Have you been bullied in your workplace?
Yes, I had some bad stuff happen in the workplace. Starting out in the cattle industry as a woman was a big barrier. Autism was nothing. Autism was nothing. Being a woman.
Yes.
And there's a scene in the HBO movie where they
I
put
saw
bull testicles on my vehicle, and that happened.
I saw that.
That actually happened.
It actually happened.
That actually happened. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That actually happened. And the people that bullied me were middle managers. The people that worked directly with the cattle were good, and the big bosses who owned the places were good. It was the foremans. That's where all my trouble was.
Oh, okay.
They didn't like this weird girl coming into their territory. And that was difficult to deal with. But there were some good mentors.
Okay.
There was a contractor named Jim who had a tiny little steel concrete construction business, and he seeked me out to design jobs. He was a good mentor. When I got really down about some of these foremen bullying me and stuff, he kept me going. He was an excellent mentor. He showed me how to set up a business. This was very important. And then when I was in high school, I had a wonderful science teacher. I can't emphasize enough the importance of mentors. Let's just go over mentors. My speech teacher. My mother teaching me to read when I was age 8, encouraging my ability in art, teaching me manners. My 3rd grade teacher was wonderful. My science teacher who got me interested in studying by giving me good projects to do. I had no interest in studying until it became a pathway to becoming a scientist.
Okay.
Very important. He worked with me about 3 years. He invested a lot of time in me, Mr. Karloff. And then Jim Uhl, the contractor. Again, important mentors. And there was another person who really helped me, Norb. He was the superintendent of the Swift plant.
Okay.
And the thing that's interesting is both Jim and Norb were former military officers. Kind of no nonsense.
Good.
And I didn't know that Norb was former military until I read his obituary. I knew that Jim was, but kind of no nonsense, real practical. And I have to thank all these people that served as mentors. There was good people there. And one of the reasons why they worked with me is they could see I had ability. And this goes back to, I'm right here, I've got some of my drawings right here. They saw my work. And they saw my work.
And they took you serious.
Well, that's just it. I learned to sell my work instead of myself.
Correct.
That's really important. So let's say it's fixing motorcycles. Well, you show some old wrecked bike. Here's the picture before, and here's what it all looks like afterwards. Before and after pictures.
Correct. So you show them
Yeah.
what exactly has been done by me. On a lighter note, Dr. Temple Grandin, as you spoke about your visual thinking, what are the kind of dreams that people on the autism spectrum
No, I
have?
dream in full color, very visual.
Wow. So you have color dreams in color.
Yeah, in color,
Wow.
motion, and
Wow.
it's mostly visual.
Okay, it's mostly visual.
Yeah.
That's so nice. Also, that brings me to another question. Parents have this, after the child is done with therapy, with everything, they move further in life. What about marriage? What is going to happen next?
Well,
Will they...
Okay, let's say a child is now 12, 14 years old.
Correct.
And one thing that was a big problem for me was being bullied and teased in school. And the only places I was not bullied and teased in school was friends who shared interests. It was horseback riding and model rocket club. Today it might be the robotics club, the school band playing musical instruments, but friends who shared interests. So these kids get these special interests. Like one teacher started a Star Wars club in the school because
Wow.
a kid likes Star Wars. Okay, that was an easy thing to do.
Correct.
We need to make this big scrapbook of all your articles to show to Jim. And then when he saw all the work I had done, he gave me a raise.
Wow.
I saved my job. It was a big scrapbook about that thick. I actually still have it. And that saved my job.
Wow. So, Dr. Temple, we know for the fact that you did not get married. So, did you ever try any relationship?
Well, one of the things, I saw too many bad relationships.
Ah,
Okay.
Too many bad relationships. My parents got divorced. They were not throwing things at each other. And then out at my aunt's ranch, her husband was when he was sober, nice, and when he was drunk, he was just horrible. And he would say every swear word in the book to her. I never saw a marriage I could see myself in.
Oh, yeah. I can understand. So,
But then there's other marriages that have been successful, and it usually goes around shared interests. There's a lady named Jennifer, and she's given talks on autism, and for their engagement dinner, they went to a really nice white tablecloth restaurant. Because you got to have a really romantic conversation about computer data storage systems.
oh, wow.
Because that's just so interesting.
Yes.
Okay, see, that's an example of shared interests.
Correct. So, never did you get into any relation? Did you try ever? A boyfriend
Well,
or
a little
something
bit,
of that
but
sort?
not really.
Not really. Oh, that's great.
And then what I've kind of done in my life is I've replaced social complexity with intellectual complexity.
Correct.
And then there's other people on the spectrum. If you read the Unwritten Social Rules, Sean and I have things that are the same, but then the things about us that are really different. He was a lot more social. He finally did get married and is in a successful marriage. He was a lot more social. In fact, I remember one time he wrote about getting jealous of his dog's social skills. That would never even cross my mind to do that.
Beautiful. This is why we always quickly connect with Dr. Temple Grandin. She gives such amazing insights. You are a huge inspiration for us, Doctor. You are our visionary. So, Doctor, you love animals. How did you develop? How did you know that you love animals?
I had to be exposed to them.
Let's just talk about your hug machine. The world is inspired by you. What inspires you? There are so many things that we have seen. How the therapy was given before and now what the therapies are. So what are the kind of therapies, doctor, that you would like to recommend?